All right, here we go. We are doing our paper and project and research therein on APIs. The group at hand presenting is made up of none other than Ray Carnicelli, Eamon Khalifah, Matt Delk, Jonathan Fuentes, and then the voice at hand, Drew Hutcheson. Let's dive in. So our research was focused on application programming interface, otherwise known as API. And here's a little bit of the structure of our paper and PowerPoint deck here. Part 1 is going to be intro to API. Part 2 is going to be APIs in real life, an interview with an actual API user. We're able to conduct an interview with someone who actually uses APIs on a daily and regular basis on a real practical level. So look forward to that here in a bit. And then part 3, we actually take a deeper dive into some of Google's APIs and applications and really zero in on some pretty neat things that Google's doing, and really broadens the horizon as to what you can do with APIs. So what's an API? We can tell you everything about APIs. Not so much. After all, we wrote this paper on it, did a lot of research on it, had a lot of fun learning about it, but reading that paper would take forever. So we thought we'd watch this 3-minute video and it would definitely be more entertaining. Now, last time we presented and gave an update on our paper, we did watch this 3-minute video. We're not going to watch it here in this recording, but just to give you a little refresher on what this video was about, it used the analogy of a waiter or waitress being or fulfilling the role of an API. That is to say, when you go to a place and you give someone your order at the restaurant, the waiter or waitress is going to do what? They're going to take your order back to the chef, who's going to prepare your food, and in turn, the waiter or waitress is going to bring your food back to you. In similar fashion, an API is a communication form of code that is going to take a user's request. So you or I would be the user, and it's going to request it from an existing web-based software application and communicate back and forth. So that's the gist of an API. All that to say, an API is a set of programmable instructions which bridge a web-based application to a custom-made web-based tool. In other words, if an existing web-based entity such as Google or Amazon has applications they've created, the API will allow others to access it and use it or bridge it to their development and implement the same tool. Thus, the API specifies how software components should interact. So this is why you may go on to Twitter, Instagram, or Yelp, or Uber, or some other type of entity and see something in the interface there that may not have been originated by that specific entity, Uber, Yelp, or what have you. It's because they're piggybacking off of an API and communicating with that API from someone else who originated it, that being, I don't know, Google, Amazon, or whomever. Some flowchart action here that we found that kind of presents API usage pretty well. Here you're going to have the communication going on right here, the service or the request, if you will. And then you're going to have the web services over here and the underlying systems and data. Now, here we go. The API is the request. This is your waiter here, taking the request back and forth. The web service at hand is going to be, I guess we could say, the front-end developer, if you would. So the user interface that you're using at hand. And then the underlying systems/data would be the back end of things. So this may be your Amazon, your Google, the actual existing web-based software or program or code that is already in place. API is a request that it's receiving, and then the web service is what's being used by the user. Is there money in APIs? We asked this question specifically because, after all, we are B school students, right? And as a business school student, we want to get straight to the bottom line, as that's why we're kind of in this thing, figuring out how to capitalize off of every jot and tittle of everything and celebrate the almighty dollar, right? So, yeah, there's a lot of money in APIs. APIs are laying the seeds for a new data economy within the Internet of Things to be capitalized off of. For example, Salesforce, that juggernaut CRM that another group's even did a project on, generates more than half of its revenue through APIs. Twitter, Google, Amazon, each of them are deriving revenues from API transactions that number in the billions. You can check out API management blog for further details. I would definitely go and check it out, because not only does it give more specifics on how these corporate entities are making all this money off of APIs, but it also breaks down how APIs can be used on a more practical level for average Joe Schmoes like you and I to capitalize off of them as well. So we want to know, how are these companies doing this? How are APIs being used? Generally speaking, from all of our research that we conducted, we broke it down into two different main areas. And this is kind of the paradigm that makes up APIs: operational task and data manipulation. And this data-driven economy, a lot of what APIs are used for comes back to the data that they retrieve. Let's start with operational tasks. Operational tasks allow businesses to scale unlike ever before, scale both their product offering and even their brand name. So there's like a twofold usage here, not merely to scale product offering, but also even in terms of marketing, just to get their name out there faster. So when we first introduced the class to our topic, we kind of used the quintessential example of Uber. Now, here we're going to go a little bit further and kind of contrast it with Facebook. What we realized was, when Facebook first started, sure, yeah, they were using APIs then too, but Facebook was scaling, lightning fast, but they weren't making money as nearly as quickly as Uber has been able to do by utilizing APIs. But as APIs have grown in their usage, so too have businesses been able to adapt the way they use them to find ways to make money at a quicker rate. Here comes along Uber all these years later after Facebook. Not only are they scaling their actual business, their operational tasks at lightning speed, but Uber has also been turning their top line growth into bottom line profit a lot quicker as well, by way of using APIs in a new fashion compared to how Facebook was initially using them. When it comes to data manipulation, it allows entities to make integral decisions off of the data drawn from the API feed. So here's what's crucial to note about API usage. If you use an API from an existing entity, whether it's Google or Amazon, those entities can see within that API the data that you're collecting. So you may ask the question, well, why does Google give away so many of their APIs for free, or Twitter or Instagram or data.gov or whatever? Well, a lot of it's because they may not be getting paid in actual greenbacks, that is almighty dollar. They may be getting paid in the amount of data that they're receiving from your users, allowing them to better know how to target their consumers, their target markets, and so forth. So a lot of times the data that they can draw from within the API usage that they're allowing others to use is how they're ultimately getting paid, if you will. More specifically, here are some different ways in which APIs are being used to disrupt the once necessity of physical interaction, and it's seen in the following areas: meeting places. Right now, even things like GoToMeeting or the differing ways that, even in the financial space, the way that advisors are meeting with clients remotely via the internet, a lot of times APIs are being used that way so that they can correspond in real time in ways that they haven't been able to before. So for example, in the user interface, there may be a screen in front of you where you're seeing, say, your advisor, or maybe just someone you're meeting with at a conference room, but off on the side, there are adjacent tools which are allowing you to take notes, which are at the same time being correlated to an app and saved somewhere in real time. That's all taking place through some type of API feed. Building workplace access, especially health monitoring. There's been an increase in API usage within the healthcare space, and this is being done a lot of ways through physicians being able to monitor a patient's health, and at the same time zero in on maybe some type of trend they're noticing, and they can use the API to correspond or place a request, if you will, to keep with the waiter waitress analogy, to focus on a specific area of the data they're getting from the monitoring that they're doing, and begin to draw trends and make a proper diagnosis. Financial transactions, client experience and engagement, and even home development. So what does all this mean? Well, there's a current and ongoing merger of the digital with the physical, and it's making headway through API integration. Much of this simply comes down to companies leveraging social identities through APIs to streamline access and control of data. Herein lies the true power of APIs. So to echo that last point, much of API usage simply comes down to companies leveraging social identities through APIs to do what? To streamline access and control of data.
With those examples of APIs, what does this mean in today's environment? There's a current and ongoing merger of the digital with the physical, and it is making headway through API integration. Much of this simply comes down to companies leveraging social identities through APIs to streamline access and control of data. Herein lies the true power of APIs. So what's next for APIs? API world domination. Just kidding. But seriously, API usage will continue to be a global phenomenon. This chart demonstrates NPR tracking their requests starting in 2008, showing exponential growth in the API requests. And this chart demonstrates the growing of API network exponentially throughout the decade. A real-world application afforded me the opportunity to meet with a senior IT manager who works and uses and develops APIs for everyday applications within my company, Tyco Security. I interviewed Ken Soderholm, talking about how frequently APIs are used within Tyco, and it was very clear that APIs are used both for the internal back-of-house operations as well as customer-facing operations. Regularly growing usage of APIs. A recent example was the integration of a billing program utilizing an API to attach contracts to invoices so that our customers, when they receive an invoice, shows the exact agreement for which the bill is being generated. Areas of opportunity are so many within a large organization like Tyco, making internal operations more efficient, transparent, and offer the client a better overall experience. The soil of opportunity is fertile for the usage and growth of APIs within our company.
We wanted to think about some areas of opportunity to expand API usage, since we saw in Ray's interview that APIs can be used for very practical items in the workplace. APIs aren't just for helping scale a business product or brand, much like in the case of Uber. They're also for making internal operations more efficient, transparent, and offer the client a better experience, like in the case of Tyco. In other words, the soil of opportunity is fertile for you to find ways to apply APIs for practical purposes and license it out to companies as a form of revenue stream. What really sticks out to the reader of this interview is the rate at which the usage of APIs has been increasing. We realize that the usage of API is on a true incline, and it seems that it is due to the seamless and endless ways in which APIs can be used. At this rate will continue because of that. Our predictions, based off our research and interaction with API users, is that within the decade, API usage will no longer be the new thing in business, but the norm in business. APIs will become regular necessities to operate on systems and utilize tools to enhance operational performances. All this talk of API and what does an API look like? So here's an example of an API. It is a series of codes. API is built from codes, and while coding can be intimidating, APIs can be fairly easy. There are a lot of online resources available that are most of the time free that will teach you how to integrate, use, or build API codes. Part 3 of our report, we're going to be zeroing in on Google's API. So we decided to research how a tech company like Google utilizes API and what all they're really doing with them.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is Khalifah. In this part, we're going to narrow our research on Google APIs. As you know, other companies do have a gathering of APIs. However, Google has the largest amount of data where people can access. Since they are a leader on this field, they start ahead of others on the API. They have different kind of APIs, as you can see here in this chart. In this picture, there's a lot of APIs. All of them, they are belong to Google, and this link will take you to a Google accessible APIs where there is a lot of and more APIs. So other may be using Google APIs for free, but Google is finding ways to generate revenue from this. The greatest way Google is being paid is through the data it collects from any entity which uses their APIs, which is a smart idea. Okay, and now we're going to move to my colleague, Matthew. Thanks for listening.
Now we're going to take a look at 3 of Google's specific APIs. The first 2 are largely popular and probably used by all of us here, and that's Google Maps Coordinate and Google Maps Engine APIs. Together, Google Maps Coordinate and Engine APIs allow businesses and apps such as Yelp and Uber to build and support their IT infrastructure, which in turn allows us to enjoy their services. The third is Google's Visualization API. This API allows us to use programs like Google Docs and also allows charts and other visualization tools within Google Docs to be user interactive, even more so than Excel. Some suggestions for Google regarding all of their APIs. Right now, there's a lot of freedom in how to create an API and what to use it for. This is a good, even a great thing until it becomes a bad thing. We believe there needs to be more oversight in the ways APIs are being built and used, especially in light of the large growth. If APIs are copyrighted, there needs to be clear legislation on what makes one API copyrightable over another. Whoever has ownership can make any modifications or even shut an API down, affecting any others already using the API. Risk measures are very much needed, especially in light of the last comment. Basically, can an API be removed by the creator? If so, does this create an enormous risk in using that API? There should be measures in place to avoid this, and also measures that outline the consequences if this were to happen. With all of this being said, and on behalf of my entire team, thank you for your time. We're going to leave you with this final thought. Now that you've received a glimpse of APIs and how they can be used, in what way can they be used in your life or place of work? The following slide shows a glimpse of our references. Thank you.